Hey everyone, Harry here to talk about one of the two lawsuits going on now in Illinois. Now, Governor Pritzker, the mayor of Chicago, Cook County, and others have challenged the basic deploy and federalization of National Guard officers from Illinois and as well from Texas. That's a feature that hasn't gotten a lot of focus, but stop and think about that for a second. People from Texas are in Illinois fighting, as if it's some kind of civil war. That is being fought out now. There's a hearing currently going on. In addition, there's a separate lawsuit brought by journalists as well as religious leaders and others, and that's about what I would call the excessive force aspect of the whole operation. So where we have seen in recent days, YouTubes or whatever, where a highly circulating one was the one where a cleric was pepper sprayed by this guy who shot it from the top of a building. Boom. There's been instance after instance after instance where the federal officials on the scene, ICE, but they're also from other agencies, have in fact acted excessively in violation of the Fourth Amendment. These are not the National Guard, who have been alleged to sometimes join in this stuff, but in theory are there to provide support. These are the basic agents who are there, and they're really acting tough and nasty and unconstitutionally. So we're talking about, one of the plaintiffs, a club, we had 4 members who were hit indiscriminately by pepper spray bullets, tear gas, arrests that are improper, vehicles that are roughed up, people's faces are sprayed. All of this that is 100% not what the agents are allowed to do. What are they allowed to do? They're allowed to question briefly people whom they think they have some kind of particularized suspicion, some real factor. And there's a dispute about, well, what about if they are of a certain race and speak a certain language? That is still being played out. You had an opinion in the Supreme Court giving the officers a certain amount of leeway there. But in any event, that's what they can. The question is, whom can they go up to in the first instance? And then what can they do? And the law is clear. You can have a couple questions. And if from those questions you develop probable cause to believe the person has committed a crime, then you can arrest. What's actually happening on the ground? Nothing like it. We have seeing all kinds of evidence of the federal agents just going in and running pell-mell over the Constitution. They're not starting by asking people questions and then developing. They're just totally making war on the people of Chicago. The most vivid example was an entire building on the south side of Chicago that federal agents just attacked as if it were a site in Afghanistan they were trying to find a terrorist in. They rappelled down, they burst in, no effort even to give lip service to what Tom Homan and others say on TV about what they're able to do. So based on that, they bring a lawsuit, and the lawsuit today has a very forceful restraining order set by the judge, Sarah Ellis, who wrote, "Whatever lawlessness is occurring is not occurring by peaceful protesters." She said some actions by federal agents clearly violate the Constitution. Individuals are allowed to protest. That's part of what's going on here. The cleric who got pelted with tear, he was part of a demonstration. You can't do that to First Amendment folks. We saw on TV yesterday a demonstrator pointing a phone or something, and the federal agent responding by pointing a gun at her. I cannot tell you, having been in law enforcement, how improper that is. But so Ellis says they're allowed to speak. It's a First Amendment right, and stop messing with it. So she issues a temporary restraining order, and it's partly categorical, like quit it with pepper spray bullets. Don't use tear gas unless, so there, if you can show there's a serious threat to law enforcement officers or others, which they're claiming rampantly in the press, but just really isn't borne out. Okay, but otherwise, forget about it. No physical force against journalists. No arresting journalists without they're holding people. That's an arrest. And they're doing it even though they don't suspect them of committing a crime. That's an unlawful arrest. Stop doing that. And here's a pretty big one. She requires the federal agents to wear badges or other visible identification so the public can know who they are, unless they're officers who are working undercover. The agents have mightily resisted this, arguing that we're being doxxed, or we are, that this will invite reprisals by citizens and the like. It's very unusual. When you encounter police officers, and police officers often face hostile citizens, you see their name. And in this instance, it's especially important because we find that there are people going around masquerading as, with counterfeit ice on their truck, etc. If they don't have to identify themselves, that means these folks can go and A, rough up, but B, rob or kidnap, etc. The rule really should be that, but for concrete and really tangible reasons to think there's a problem with it, and a law enforcement agent should have to identify themselves. So anyway, that's now been entered. DOJ criticized it and was against it. It's a very strong opinion. It's not only the provisions that I mentioned, but, calling out the federal agents for unlawful conduct, calling out the chilling effect of their conduct, and saying, I hope in entering this TRO, we'll no longer have these issues that we've been experiencing in the Northern District of Illinois. One other point to mention that is fairly interesting is she specifies in her order, and this goes to things we've been talking about in terms of the use of the National Guard, who, recall, there are a few hundred from Illinois who have been federalized over the objection of the governor, and people from Texas, National Guard in there fighting against, citizens in Illinois or policing them in some way. So do not try a workaround. The order doesn't apply right now to the National Guard folks because there's not a good record that says they've been doing all these things. This is a specific problem with the federal agents. But of course, an easy way for a lawless administration to try to get around it would be to say, okay, we'll hang back, but here's what you guys do, National Guard. Here's the pepper spray. Here's the tear gas, etc. Go for it. And Ellis anticipates that possibility and says, don't try it, federal government. So all in all, it's an opinion that really reflects mistrust of the federal government, but for really concrete reasons having to do with what's been going on in Illinois for the last month, and really puts the kibosh on it. Now, it's with respect to the particular plaintiff class. So think basically journalists and religious leaders. It's not a order that can be used to say no tear gas, no, nothing of the like in your normal law enforcement operations. That and what's happening with the normal law enforcement operations, that's what is being determined now in the courtroom of not Judge Ellis, but Judge Perry. She has, just to bring you up to speed there, completed her hearing. She asked probing questions on both sides, certainly didn't seem to be, predisposed toward the challengers. And she said that she was going to come back in a couple hours, 4:30 Chicago time, and hopes to issue her decision then. Isn't sure, but hopes to. So then we'll see how that will play out. But the journalists and the clerics and others who've been roughed up by patently unconstitutional conduct by federal agents, a very firm temporary restraining order that says cut it out, and that sets that order for a couple month period, at which time they'll go into a little trial to determine whether to make the temporary order permanent. That is, unless, and we always have to account for this possibility, the administration goes running to the Seventh Circuit, that's the Court of Appeals, over the Illinois court to try to have it dissolved. But for now, the order in place is very strong. And what it basically says is federal agents quit violating clearly established Fourth Amendment law and quit using unlawful force. So it shouldn't be that hard to comply with. But we'll see whether the administration cries emergency. They're being hamstrung in ways that prevent them from dealing with this grave national emergency in Chicago. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.